Welcome to the Grit.org podcast with Colby Harris and Brian Harbin. In these episodes, they speak to top achievers in athletics and business to understand the habits and mindset they apply in order to build more grit.
Welcome back to the Grit.org podcast. My name is Colby Harris. Alongside me, as always, is Brian Harbin, and we're here with today's guests, Paul Lohr and Hupp Huppmann. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So recently, Paul, a Marine Corps veteran, and Hupp, Navy veteran, did the unimaginable in a pursuit to help fellow veterans across the country. Alongside two other veterans, Billy Cimino and Cameron Hansen, these four men rode the Atlantic Ocean, clocking over 3,000 nautical miles in 51 days, 11 hours, and 41 minutes from La Gomera, Spain to Antigua and the British Virgin Islands. Now, let me add, these guys were not paddling 3,000 miles for cracks and giggles. The Far From Home team's mission is to raise money to help vets struggling with PTSD, identity issues, housing accessibility, and cognitive disorders, with Canines for Warriors being their go-to foundation. To date, they have raised over $900,000. Their mission started in 2019 with a vision, and these four men, all from small-town Amelia Island, came together to commit and do the unthinkable. Starting December 12th, 2021, and ending February 1st, 2022, the 51 days on the water took years of preparation and purpose. We have Paul and Hupp here today to share more about their row, the mission, and the grit it took to bring it all together. So to get started, just a small background. These guys, as mentioned, both are veterans of their respected branch and now current residents of Fernandina Beach on Amelia Island. As retired veterans, they both love their small island and the community they have there. One thing you'll come to find about them both is whether they're doing photography, surfing, playing music, or rowing an entire ocean, these guys always seem to have a smile on their face, which really makes me come to enjoy their presence the most. So without further ado, Paul, starting off with you, it was your idea initially. You were the skipper of the boat. You managed a lot of the fundraising and logistics throughout the course of the mission. Can you dive into us, what sparked this idea? Where did it all really start for you to pursue this mission to row the ocean?
So first, thanks for inviting us out here, Kobe and Brian. It really is. It's just a neat opportunity to meet your audience. I know Hupp and I are really excited. So the idea just didn't just start from me. As everything, everything is always a collective. When I first met Billy Cimino, we all found out through his family that they were trying to raise money for another veteran team who's actually going to go out and take the ocean again this year in 2022. They're called Fight or Die. So they were raising money for them. And then Billy, was just talking to me one night in the bar. We were sitting there like, how can we how can we raise some money for them? So we came up with this paddle event. And then through the paddle event, we got to meet the team. We got to meet one of the team members, Fight or Die. And then after that, we got to meet another team member when we went out and did a visit with them when we were thinking about entertaining the ocean. So that's where the genesis was from. That's where it kind of just started from. Where I kind of came into the picture was really I just applied for their team to row out in the ocean. And then Kobe, being a surfer, I had a trip scheduled for Indonesia. So I wasn't losing that. I was going on that. That was a trip that's been planned for years. And so then we just came up and said, well, hey, why don't we row? And then the four of us knew each other, just kind of in social settings. And we became friends, and then we became closer friends. And then we just said, hey, we had this beautiful community that we live in. How about us? We could do it. We can row the ocean. So that's where it just all kind of started from.
That's awesome. And, on that note, as you said, obviously you would now need a team. You thankfully had these three other great gentlemen around you. So, Hupp, over to you. How did you get roped in, and what were your initial thoughts on making the trip?
Yeah, it was really interesting because when the guy from the other team came down, he had the shirt on that said, any idiot can row an ocean. It takes any idiot can row a boat. It takes a real idiot to row an ocean. And it was intriguing that, meeting the man, and at the time, we're on the other side of it now, but at the time it was so intriguing to me. I'd never heard of this, where you could physically make your way across the ocean. And after a career in the Navy, I was really hooked. Like, I thought, sounds impossible. So when the four friends came together to form a team, it was an easy decision for me because we were already so close. working on the other project together with the paddle, it just seemed like let's take that synergy and direct it towards a bigger cause and see what happens. Because we had raised a decent amount of money for that that other team. I don't recall the number, 10, 12,000, somewhere in there.
Just a little over 10,000.
So we thought, maybe we could go for a bigger vision and see what happens with this. So, and I love the guys, so it was really easy once you're, tied into the brotherhood and the fellowship of veteran status together. Let's go. Let's try this.
Yeah, if you can paint the picture a little bit, if you could just visualize 4 guys sitting around a table with just a pad and an idea, and really what was the bond or the glue, if you want to use that as like a physical example, it really was just like what Hupp was saying. We actually physically even said that we wouldn't think of any other 4 guys that we would row across the ocean with and try this. So we were all really happy and content there, and it's amazing how secure that can make you feel, and we ended that way. That's the really even neater part about it.
Yeah.
And why rowing? I mean, had any of you guys done long distance rowing before? Or
Absolutely not. Paul's a water enthusiast, as I'm sure you guys know from previous discussions. I love the water. I worked as a kayak guide and paddled. We'd done a couple of trips around the island just in kayaks, so we got a little ocean time on a backwater kayak. And I thought, this is pretty intriguing to take it further out and see what's possible. So the first step was to reach out to somebody who could teach us to row, literally, like we've never done this. So one of our guys, Cameron, the Air Force veteran, is a JU alumni, and he took the lead and contacted the row coach down there. And I really kind of love this story too. So he reaches out, hey, my name's Cameron. I know you don't know me. I'm a JU graduate. I'm one of 4 veterans, and we're looking for a row coach to do this charity event. And the coach is like, all right, that sounds doable. I can help you, with that row thing. So, oh, by the way, we're going to row across the Atlantic Ocean. And, there's that silence, right? But then Jason was completely on board, took us in and trained us up, and I think provided us really a great foundation to get it done. Yeah. So, no experience necessary on the resume, just a big heart, right? You got to have some heart and fortitude. So, yeah, if your viewers and listen again want to just kind of visualize something, man, it's like being like Hewlett Packard, or I'm showing my age, but Apple, like you're in a garage and you really just have a concept, right? And that's really what we had. We just had a concept, and we reached out to somebody and like, hey man, we want to do this. And they're like, yeah, we're on board, and you got all these people that don't even know each other, but they're immediately saying yes. And so it's an amazing amount of really great energy to go forward.
And I see, passion is obviously the greatest fuel, and I can already tell both of you have a lot of passion about the project, as well as just really assisting others, and especially I think the camaraderie of it is really amazing too. So Paul, for you, again, as mentioned, the team has now raised over $915,000. So we start originally raising about $10,000 for another team, and here you guys are now almost at $1 million for your team personally. Can you share some insight into the process and challenges, if any, or just overall feedback that you guys saw as you started raising money and promoting the mission and trying to just talk to more people to really make this thing possible?
Yeah, so it was a long journey, and I'll go back and do a little talk story about, because I go back to when Hupp and I, and I just say Hupp and I, so it is a 4-man team, but we did break down like division of labor, who would do what, just so we can stay focused, because you'll see at the very end, it's a huge tasking to get into ocean rowing. It's totally a different sport. There's a lot of logistics to it, a lot of project management aspects to it. But Hupp and I, in the beginning, put together a complete sponsorship package, and we really just went out to the row community to see, what was out there. And we didn't plagiarize, but we just kind of did a lot of research and reading, and then you kind of just take what you get there and you create your own shell. So Hupp and I got with a bunch of other folks, and we put together this, what we thought was really a cool sponsorship package. And at that time too, Hupp and I, and both, I'm sure Cam and Billy, had in their minds, when we put this together, like, wow, everybody's going to come busting out of the wall. Red Bull, Nike, all this is going to start happening. Adidas, we're going to get all these major sponsors. And, and we noticed that once we launched really right when COVID was kind of just starting to happen. And I remember the story so distinctly because I was in Vietnam, and Hupp and I actually did a FaceTime call to kind of go over the package and say, hey, you know what, is it looking good? Can we launch it right in March? And we were like, yeah, we're good. So when I came back, we launched it, and not even, I think maybe, Hupp, 10 days later, COVID hit. Yeah. And that really just, on top of, us learning how to grab major big sponsors, now all of a sudden you're in one of the biggest pandemics of your lifetime, and everything is shutting down, businesses are shutting down. So the long story is, and Hupp and I got together and we kind of just did like a reset, like, what are we going to do, really now? And we actually took a hiatus. We said, we're just going to stop. We're not going to talk to any businesses. We're going to let families and everybody adjust and really just take care of themselves, take care of their own right now, because none of us knew really what the landscape was like. So, but for us, that really kind of put us on the back burner, because to do ocean rowing, you need to buy a ocean rowboat, which none of us had. So it took a lot of restructuring. You want to add a little on to that?
No, I agree. I was reading ahead a little bit. It's leading into the paddle. Was there a second guess or a setback? And the first one out of the gate was COVID, because it's an expensive undertaking to get started. You can certainly raise enough to pay that back and come out even, which we've been fortunate to do. But what do you do? And I think that we were fortunate in that because of the step back and because we were so ingrained in our own community, we thought, let's look locally. Let's step back and stay within our own, circle of influence and see what's there. And that actually kept everything breathing, was to go smaller, to stay home and work with our own community. And that's really what started driving everything. And I think we found that accidentally. I mean, it was just a great pivot to say, there's no money out there right now, that everything's down. But locally, cookie sales and bake sales and raffles, I guess it's been around so long because that stuff actually works. Once you pull your own community in.
And Hupp and I talk about, if we had to do it over again, people always ask us this question, would you want to do it in an environment without COVID? And obviously COVID, we know the ramifications that has, and we won't. But just even if it was something else, we probably wouldn't go back and look for big sponsors, because the community is really what reshaped our journey into something really amazing, to know that you can do an extraordinary gesture and have love and folks behind you really in the hardest of times and still push forward. And I think it kind of goes towards your, when we were going through your creed, your grit creed, right? There's one in there that talks about, I'm going to try and try again, right? And that's basically really what we did. You have to reset. You have to figure out, okay, this is the obstacle that's in front of us, and are we going to make the best of it, or are we just going to, sit down and give up and then come back, or are we just going to try to reshape ourselves? And we chose to really reshape ourselves. And I think that's an important point for your listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone really had to do a lot of strategizing and going back to the drawing board, just as you guys said you did, and going from that perspective of kind of, at this point, you want to go back and change anything else about it, which I think is really important. So thinking into the physical matter and the mental matter of how you actually did the trip, I think that's a big point of, you actually had to row 3,000 miles. We can talk about the funds, we can talk about getting the boat, getting there, but then you actually had to row 3,000 miles. So for you both, how did you guys try to prepare mentally and physically for 51 days on the water, just with three of your, what I would now call some of your closest friends, of course, and how did that whole just process go down leading up to the row?
Yeah, sure. Really just planning. Again, we're four guys from 50 to 60-ish. So, we were all physically active. I think that, fortunately, we were all either playing ball. Paul's always surfing on the water. Billy's a triathlete. He runs all the time. And then Cam was a kind of a former pro football player, semi-pro football player. So he's in great shape, too. So we had a great foundation. And our physical program really was more about what's it going to take, to pursue that 2-hour shift of on and off every 2 hours. So it wasn't specifically geared more than, it was really about teamwork too, about getting together, having a program that strengthened us up, created some endurance, and then, it focused on different areas between some cardio, some strength training, a little bit of bulking, being able to produce a good pull. That was really key, I think, is being able to make the boat move, as an individual. Once you put everybody together, that you're getting good traction on there. So we teamed up with CrossFit 32034 up on Amelia Island. We had 2 trainers that would meet with us every Tuesday morning at 0600 and, put us through their grind to get us strength training and a little bit of bulking. And it worked for us. It wasn't I don't think it was a crazy physical program. A lot of this was on your own. You had to trust your teammate that they were going to put in that time, outside of just that basic strength training to live on the erg.
Yeah, and
live on the erg.
I was going to say for you, Paul, I know there was a lot of mental training that went into it, a lot of preparation in that regard too. So how did you guys try to, fully prepare for the 51 days of almost isolation on the water?
The mental, if you talk to any ocean rower, they'll tell you that the mental aspect of the row is about 80%. And the physical part is about 20%. And I know, Hupp, you think
absolutely,
they're definitely right on. So we prepared. We ended up through an in-kind donation. Dawn Grant, who's a hypnotist and a mental performance coach, she stepped in and provided us an in-kind donation for the whole entire team. And I know Hupp and I, probably out of the 4 of us, really took onto it the most. She would do questions about like what were our fears, what were our concerns, sometimes not even fears, but just what were our concerns. And I know Hupp and I fleshed out, for me, it was being claustrophobic. I was kind of worried about, for some reason, I just start getting in small spaces. And that little cabin, if you've never been in our boat, it's like, Hupp and I ended up renaming it the dumpster. And that's like a little 4x4 space. And then you have to put your legs underneath an area that maybe you might have got maybe 5 inches of clearance once your legs are underneath there. So, she helped us get through that by making audio tapes, having discussions, group discussions on how we're overcoming, the obstacles. And then Hupp and I give us a lot of credit when we were training. We put a lot of time into being in that cabin. Any opportunity that we had that we both had to be in there, we took that as a training opportunity. Like, I'll give you an example. We got into some really cold weather on our first training run when we were going up towards St. Simon's. So we were kind of almost in the onset of hypothermia. And we really needed to pull over because we didn't have the appropriate clothing. It just really got down in the 30s that night. So we found a dock and we pulled over. And again, here's that thing about trying again, right? We didn't look at it as like we're failing and we needed to stop and we needed to get onto a dock. We looked at it, okay, now we're going to get onto the dock. Let's just hold here, and we get in the cabin and we slept the night together, in a really small space, because you've got to learn that. If we were out in the ocean and we were in, major seas, like 40, 50-foot seas, and we all had to get in there, you're going to have to learn how to live in there. So that was a way of getting through it, just to try to train in the actual, in the actual moment. And Dawn, I know you captured this really well, Hupp. Tell them about like how Dawn wants you to look at a situation, not at as bad as that's an opportunity.
Yeah, she comes at it from a different angle. It's I'll give you an example of seasickness is everybody's first concern. So Dawn created an audio called Motion Wellness, right? So it really gets in your head that it's okay to have this physical thing happening to you. And then I wish I could tell you the secret of the tape, like tell you here's how it works. But unfortunately, it puts you under within minutes. And so I don't know the whole audio stream of what she actually said. But when I woke up the next morning, I felt better, so we were all seasick a day out. We're heading out. We're all coming to terms with the inner ear. And whatever she whispered in my inner ear worked. When I woke up the next day, I was already ready to eat. So there's tools out there that you may not know about or even trust, but sometimes you got to test them out. Something like this, you could be skeptical and say, well, mental training, but it really worked for me. It made a world of difference in that first few days. Some teams they can't perform because of the first week. They're out of it, but we were all through that pretty quickly. Yeah,
there was just a team that was on the water that had to go make a diversion to land because one of the rowers, got seasick.
And now they've stopped.
And they've stopped,
They've stopped because of the hurricane season.
And Hupp brings out a really great point, too, for your listeners, because this kind of ties into veteran suicide. folks that are in the military or really any high performance sports, sometimes we're taught that, it's not okay to underperform, or it's, but you're going to have your moments at times. You're going to be in a situation where something's not comfortable for you, and it's okay to say that you're not okay. And that's what Dawn kind of just made us work through, that the mindfulness and your awareness and your acuity to what is not working for you will actually sometimes can make you perform better. Absolutely. Right? Because if you recognize it and then you engage the things that will make you overcome that, you will overcome that. And that I thought was really significant that Dawn, brought out. And we actually try to bring that message now, that it's okay to say that you're not okay about something. Like for me, everybody out there in the audience could sit there and go, oh, he's a Marine and he's claustrophobic. I'm okay with that, right? Because I put myself into that situation to train to overcome that. So the only way that I can overcome something is if I recognize it and try to train through it, right? It's the same thing with weights. If I want to get stronger, I'm gonna keep training, right? In a certain way. So if I'm claustrophobic, I'm gonna try to train myself out of that.
Well, and the biggest thing too, and whether you're rowing across the ocean or, in any type of sport or anything in life, really, a lot of times it's you versus you, right? And even though you're rowing with a team, it's like so much of overcoming life and adversity is dealing with that voice in your head, that voice telling you, oh, you're scared of these little spaces. And such a big part of overcoming that and dealing with it is reframing how you look at it and looking at it from a different perspective. Yep. And instead of looking at it as a weakness, you now turn it into strength and something that's going to help you. And once you overcome that, the confidence you get from it kind of starts this momentum. Absolutely. And so it's really neat that, here you guys, like you said, in your 50s and 60s have overcome something that previously you thought was holding you back, but now has given you guys a lot of momentum and confidence moving forward. And I'm sure it's probably going to inspire a lot of people too. And kind of speaking of overcoming adversity, so I know there was a bit of a hiccup when you guys were in Spain trying to get the boat through customs. So tell us, and the name of your boat is Courageous.
It's Courageous. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that story in Spain.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll take that one. So let's set the setting first. So Hupp and us, the whole team, with a couple of other teams that were from the United States, were sitting at a small little cafe, and we were getting ready to have lunch. We've ordered. We're all kind of sitting there, joking around. And I always kind of put this like, it's like in a movie that you see, like if you see somebody that's in government, high-level government, and all of a sudden everybody in the room is looking at their phones because they're all getting kind of the same message. That's what was happening at our table, but I didn't recognize it yet at the moment. So my phone goes off, and I usually just don't always jump to the phone, but we knew that we were waiting for the boat, to clear through customs. So I was looking at it a lot. So here goes this message, and all of a sudden I open up my email, and the very first lines in it is, the first line was, we've got a really big problem. So now your heart starts pumping, because you're like, oh my gosh, you're 6,000 miles away, or however many miles away we are right now, and we don't have a boat, and you see this, and where it's coming from. It's coming from the customs broker. And then I'm reading it more, and it had some dollar amount in there, like over $80,000 you must come up with, if you want to get your boat back. And I'm like, okay, wow, what is happening? Why am I having to pay more than I paid for the boat? So that was immediately, that was going in my, and that would help me kind of just discount it a little bit, because I was like, all right, that really ain't going to happen. You could just hold on to the boat, and we'll find another boat, right? Try again. But yeah, it really kind of just stumped us. And then finding out that the rest of my mates from the United States were also getting the same email. What ended up happening was, in short, is somewhere along the message in customs, they got that the boat was coming to Spain and was going to stay in Spain and was going to be sold in Spain. So there were a lot of duty and excess taxes that were going to be owed on the boat. But as time goes on, we saw that message kind of dwindle down in price, and it was real funny. But the main message out of that whole scenario was, we really just stayed the course as a team, and we didn't get excited about the problem. We really tried to work the problem. Mm-hmm. And again, I could tie it to one of your lines in your grit creed, right? Is am I a problem solver? And that's what we all were. We were problem solvers. And then you have to find folks that can also help you, because sometimes you just can't solve everything. And in that context, having to work through the Spanish government, speaking Spanish and all that, we really went towards Atlantic Campaigns, who is hired to run, this whole Talisker race. And really, they were the agents of change that we immediately shifted to and started communicating through to figure out there's got to be a way to solve this problem. Yeah.
Right.
Because there's 35 other boats right now sitting in the boat parking lot, that are being worked on. So, and we're part of that. And, why are those 35 boats sitting there and ours are in customs? And that's really the way we looked at it. So,
and it seems it's really almost an uncontrollable situation even there, and I think that's something you guys, sounds like you did really well about throughout this whole process, was just focus on the controllables. If it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. It's something we can't change. Then, just as you said, just going to keep moving forward, being a problem solver, not a problem spotter. So it's really, really incredible to know that you guys just really stuck to it and continued to set it up. And sure enough, just days later, you guys were good to go. It was time to do the thing after years of preparation. So, Hupp, for you, I have to ask now, as you're heading out, leaving the port, you get that last glimpse of land. What's that experience like when you finally started to make the trip and you were leaving land for what was going to be at least probably 2 months, a little under 2 months?
Right. Yeah. It was really special, honestly. Once we got out of the harbor, when you clear La Gomera and you make that trek to the southwest, pardon me, there's nothing more to see. You're out, you look in front of you and you see this expansive ocean. And that's all you're going to see for the next at least month and a half, and then the sea starts to change as you pull away from land. What you've trained in and what you knew and what was comfortable quickly becomes uncomfortable. The movement of the boat changed, the way it reacted to the waves, how you moved around the boat while guys were now full-time on and off, no breaks, no, let's stop and talk about this. You were in it, and so you had to learn this new ballet. You had to learn the new way to get around. You remembered, oh, hey, I haven't eaten today. You really would get caught in a shift of, I got to produce power and move the boat forward, but then you would say, I haven't fed my body yet. And that's, so, we'd done it for a few days, ones and twos, but now it was going to be weeks. So we woke up the second morning and we saw not another person. So the first day you could see boats coming by, this Norwegian trio of gals passed us on the right. They were all offshore rowers already, so they blew by us, and that's the last time we saw people. When we woke up the next morning, we didn't even see boats. So the reality of it sits in really quickly. Once you're clear, and the little mountain of Tenerife disappeared behind us, day 3, you realized there was going to be nothing between there and Antigua.
And what was that like for you, Paul, just to, your first few days out there, even dealing with motion sickness? I know everyone kind of had to deal with a little bit for the first few days. What really occurred in those first few days as you adjusted, and any abnormalities or things that occurred as you got used to being on the boat?
Yeah, if you go back to my pictures, I actually took my fins and went in the water one day and went right up on the buoy that was out of the channel and took a photo of the ocean, because Hupp captured it so eloquently. I mean, there's really not much more to say on that. When you look out, in the vast sea, and this is it. You're not going to see anything for X amount of days. It's pretty eye-opening. It wakes you up really quick. You pretty much left everything behind, for a cause. And it was, but like Hupp said, you immediately will engage into all the things that you've learned during your training, that you quickly have to start adjusting to, or otherwise you're not going to, survive that period. And it really is that raw. I mean, our life was about rowing, sleeping, eating, and doing boat chores. That was it every day. Mm-hmm. That was the focus. And then the grounding factor, which I don't want anybody to miss out of here, is our why. Why did 4 guys get in a boat, leave all their possessions behind, leave all their friends and family behind? Why did they do that? And we did that to raise awareness that veteran suicide is a huge problem, in the United States. And we are losing our sons and our daughters, our aunts, our uncles, our nieces, nephews, whoever that connection is in your family. So that why always got us back to very quickly, I got to eat. I got to be in the cabin. I got to sleep. I got to be there for my mates. I got to rest up. So when it's my turn to row, I'm going to row. And then whatever our boat duties were, that was our why. That was our fuel.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. It's, talk about fight or flight. When you're in a situation like that, there's no flight, right? You have to fight. And it's similar for people going through a mental, things, or people, at war. And so you have to focus on what you can control, and what you guys could control was your schedule, really. Mm-hmm. So kind of paint the picture as far as like just a day in the life. I know you guys had a very, well thought through schedule in terms of just boat maintenance, ins and outs of operating, eating, rowing. So tell us a little bit more about kind of the day in the life.
Sure, yeah.
So, the trying to get your body to shift into a cycle of the 2 on and 2 off, as we call it, 2 men rowing, 2 men off every 2 hours, 24 hours a day. It takes your body a few days to come to terms with that sleep cycle, or I like to call it the lack of sleep cycle, and the movement at the same time. And it was, anecdotally, it was funny. We would at one point lay down to take that precious hour and a half. Paul has the record. 10 minutes later, he is up and opens the door and says, "All right, I'm ready to relieve you." We had this formal turnover we did each time. He's like, "I'm ready to relieve you, Paul. It's been 10 minutes." But your body doesn't know that. You literally lay down, your brain clicks while you're out, and then you come back up and you think it's time to go back out there. So it took a bit of time, a week or two, to really, get into some abnormal patterns that you've never experienced before. But you do learn through persistence that your body will adapt. You're living in the ocean and being exposed on that boat, your skin started to adapt to the environment. We took on this layer of stuff on our skin, not just salt, but you started to become kind of one with the environment. So to mentally push through until you can feel those changes, where, if I don't like to use the word comfortable because I don't think I ever felt comfortable, but where you started to realize you became part of the bigger experience around you, that was life-changing. That moment where you realized your body will adapt to a new rhythm, your cycles will become normal in time, and that you'll become kind of one with what's going on.
Yeah, I find the adaptation factor very interesting, because the human body is really amazing in the sense of we don't necessarily push it to its capabilities anymore the way we used to, as, shower once a day, multiple times a day, you get, comfort factors indoors, all these different things. So you don't really get to be in that environment. It's really cool to hear that you guys experience that, and you can even talk about the changes in your skin. So one question I do have to ask is, you guys did in fact face some pretty treacherous conditions. I know for a few days you guys were seeing 30, 40 plus foot swells. For both of you, unless there's a shared moment, if one of you want to take it, what was the scariest moment, or, a time where things really got a little nerve-wracking as to, the finish line might seem a little farther than you guys had originally anticipated?
On the trip, I can really honestly, and it's not being narcissistic on this or anything, but there wasn't really a point, of like scared or failure on that, because we just knew we were going to do whatever we had to do, and whatever way it turned out, we know that we gave our best, on that. So probably if I had to capture anything, it's probably being at night, being in like 30 plus foot swells, that definitely, especially with minimal light, you just don't see the waves coming from, where they're coming from. And we were in conditions where we had a lot of wave action on our beam of our boat, hitting us on the side of the boat, more than in the stern. So that was probably always nerve-wracking, because there's that chance. We never rolled, but there's always that chance, that you can roll. The boat was made extremely well from a company out of Rannoch in England. That's where we purchased the boat from. It's an R45, and we were amazed on really how she performed, out in the ocean, because, you always hear stories and you watch videos, but they're normally an anomaly than it is really, the everyday norm.
Well, that was going to be my next question, just real quick, is did it had rolling capabilities? If you guys were to turn, what was the protocol for something like that?
Yeah, the boat would roll.
Yes.
You would hold on. And you're tethered in.
It's a 6-second ride, right? We're tethered in with mountaineering harnesses around our waist, and then 2 points on the boat all times when you're outside of the cabin. So the boat would go over, you would ride with it, and you'd come back up in 6 seconds. Yeah, as long as the doors were shut, which is so every time you're out of the door, you shut the door behind you. You're in and out as quick as possible. Paul and I had a great video on that, how to make a crew change in 3 seconds.
The compartments needed to be sealed. If you compromise the compartments, then the boat performance is going to.
Yeah, that's why I was just trying to imagine there and paint the picture a little bit of what would occur in a situation like that. Because I'm sure you guys might be able to say, even if there were any boats that happened to turn throughout the trip, I'm sure that might.
I heard there was a duo that they ended up setting a world record. So I don't think the fact that they capsized slowed them down.
Yeah, no.
Oh, God bless them. A team named Wild Waves. These girls were full of energy. They had a capsize towards the end, but they flipped right back up and just kept going. I personally think it would have been a little chaotic. That there's so much going on deck and pieces and parts of everything's tethered to the boat, but to flip over and then you're outside the boat technically when you're still attached, but you're outside. You got to get everybody back in. There's injuries that's where you really could probably get hurt. Mm-hmm. There was a gentleman that started who fell and broke his elbow when the race started, and he unfortunately was only 40 miles out, but they were able to get him and his boat back in. But that's where the injury can happen.
A lot.
Something that chaotic happens.
Right, that's what I was going to say. A lot can happen. I feel like just in that brief 6 seconds, even a lot can happen in 6 seconds. But
yeah, you could kind of do it almost like surfing, right? I mean, you get caught underneath the wave, you got your leash to your board, and you've got those moments where really if you just choose your mind, again, train your mind to relax and trust that the boat's going to roll back over, you'll just snap back with the boat. But like Hupp said, probably the bigger part of it is really not the rolling. It's all the thrashing and stuff that went on. Because if you don't mind, we actually almost rolled when we were training. We were coming in just south of the Tybee Inlet, over by Wilmington, Georgia. And we were coming in the inlet about 1 o'clock in the morning. We got caught on a shoal. And we were really at a 90-degree angle on the boat. We ended up snapping 2 oars. And so you've got all that weight, that's on that boat. So it's really what's flying around is probably the most dangerous than just actually being underwater and, snapping back. You just hold your breath.
Yeah, so as for the physical exhaustion of doing the paddle, like you said, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, paddling hours on end every day, minimal sleep. I find it interesting, too. There's various research done on ways to sleep, and I've actually met people before that do 4-hour intervals. So it's kind of interesting to hear about your 2 hours because essentially you guys did, as you said, but covering roughly 70 miles a day, no real on-land training could have prepared you guys for what you were in for. Was there ever a time that your bodies did start to feel as if they were shutting down, or it really just became your physical health kind of started to become a problem, or was that something you guys just overcame?
Yeah, I think we just rolled into the physical changes. We could feel it. There was a lady doing a study when we started. She measured our muscle mass in our calves, our thighs, and our pecs, and she said, good luck, guys. When you come back, most of these are going to be gone. And we actually hadn't thought about that part. I mean, we knew we had to eat to sustain caloric intake, but actually you're so physically on game for 12 hours a day, it starts to eat your own body. And I don't think we actually had processed that part until we got out on the boat and started to physically see each other just stripping away as you were going. But I never felt physically unable. I just felt like as long as I kept eating and kept nutrition in the body would keep going. And I suffer from some lower back stuff and joints and stuff. I never felt that out there. I just kept fuel in the tank and just kept moving. And I think if you keep moving and you push through it, that's where the success is. That, like you said earlier, your body is capable of things that you don't realize. And it's not just superhuman strength. It's about endurance can be a low-level thing for a long period of time, right? As long as you make your one knot, which is what a human can produce, you're being successful for the team, and you just keep pulling.
Yeah. Sounds like it's very similar to like a runner's high. Once they get into that pace and they feel like quitting, once you break that barrier, there's really no other option than to just keep pushing. Start to enjoy it, start to kind of embrace the suck, so to say, while you're out there.
That was an expression. The one thing we also didn't, we lost weight in our glutes, and then your bones from your hips just started digging into those seats. We had double yoga mats and anything we could think of short of a sheepskin, and then those bones just bone on skin grinding. And the last week and a half was just so physically uncomfortable. But you knew you were so close that you just push through it, push through the pains, as they say.
Is there anything you want to add on there, Paul?
We could just throw some stats on there, which are always fun. Everybody likes to hear, so I'll use mine. I started out when I was training at like 222. When I hit La Gomera and got on the scale, I was 205. And then when I hit Antigua, I was 161 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and I haven't seen that weight since elementary school or like junior high school. So, yeah, you're whittling away. But like what Hupp said, though, is really critical. You trained, and we had our CrossFit training, and we held true, to about even stretching. We got word on the boat about doing calf raises. So we were doing calf raises. We were doing yoga on the boat. And I'll tell you what, man, people are right. It works. If you stick to the routines and like Hupp was saying, fuel your body, no matter what it is that's going to make you eat, and then do the stretching and keep your mind strong. It's amazing what the human body and human mind can really go through. And I think we were a testament to that. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old. So if I had to change one thing, I probably would have started bulking up a little bit earlier. I think I would have thrown on some more weight going out in the row. I would have tried to get myself back in the 220s, 230s for as much as I dwindled away.
A little extra beef on there.
And we honestly adapted in that element too. Like I was really strict about eating my food. Food became a thing for me. And then Paul would say, I don't really like this. And I'm like, I'll eat that. I kind of kept eating whatever I get my hands on, and I still lost 28 pounds. But, I made food became a pleasure thing for me. Like, that's all you got is this granola bar and some, and be careful of prunes. Don't eat prunes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you there. It's,
if you need your system flushed, have some prunes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, have a
bag of mixed fruit at night, and I ate the whole bag. And then the next day, I got completely flushed because there were mostly prunes in that bag of fruit.
Long day for everyone on the road.
So my nickname was Gunny Goes a Lot, and then I think Hupp got that one day. Man, he got a good dose of what it really means to be Gunny Goes a Lot.
Oh my.
So I have to ask, okay, so 51 days later, you're physically half the man you used to be almost, right? Because you've lost all this body weight. Mentally, you're tough as nails, but hanging on by a thread. But tell us about that feeling when you first see land and you guys are, within striking distance of getting there. Tell us that emotional.
Yeah, so you're so low to the water that you really can't see land until about 12 miles out. So we were into the day, the final day before we saw land. So day 51, we're heading in, and about 12 miles out, you could just make out this faint outline. But you could actually, and Cameron tells us, so I'm going to share it with you, you could smell it before you could see it because of whatever's going on in the island and the wind, the breeze coming out, you could see. And then you started to see the shade of green, and you hadn't seen the color green in a month and a half. And so it becomes very stark contrast to the horizon. And wow, your brain starts to remember, that's what green looks like. And then we had some difficult weather coming in on that last day. So we really were a little behind where we thought. We thought 5 p.m., 6 p.m., but suddenly it was 8, 9. It's dark now. The sun has gone down, and so it disappeared on us again. Technically, we saw it. We knew where we were headed, and then it became navigating lighted buoys because it got away from us. But man, that I can't tell you emotionally what that spike felt like, but it was the biggest adrenaline / joyfulness I've ever felt in my life. Today I'm going to set foot on land again and be back home with my family and all the things I missed, and right there. So that feeling is amazing. Yeah, I can't describe it.
You want to add on to that, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, no, it is something you like to talk about. Each one of the rowers really do love to talk about because, to be out there for 51 days, and as much as we love each other, you're seeing 4 guys after a while. I was like, hey, and to see the outline, because we had to make a call. We had to make a 20-mile call to the campaign, to the race officer. And when we made that 20-mile call, we still couldn't see land. So that was pretty weird. It was like, and it's hard to explain to your listeners because, we felt it, but it's weird when you haven't seen land, but now you're making this 20-mile call. You're only 20 miles away. We thought even when we were 100 miles away, like, wow, we're really close. Right. But it took forever just to get to that 20-mile mark. And then we're making it, and we're telling Ian, who's the safety officer, really phenomenal man, We don't see the land yet, but then all of a sudden 4 miles later, now we're seeing the land, and it was just really that exhilarating, and again, I think the part of it is, and Brian, you were starting to travel there, is it's all about work, right? I mean, here's 4 guys that didn't have a boat, didn't know how to row, didn't even have oars, and now we just took, however our route was, we just took a boat under power of human spirit and physical strength along with nature, and we went off the coast of Africa, and we are looking at our final, I won't even call it our final destination, but a mark that was in our journey. If you put it in that kind of context, it's amazing. And it was fueled by a community. And please don't ever miss that piece, that, the community that was there in Antigua, and the community that was doing the watch parties on Amelia Island. And even we started hearing even in all over the country, people that were doing our followers, folks that were at home and having maybe, 12 people in their living room, watching. If I can.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Thought I was going to go through the interview and not cry. But if you can go through something like that, I mean, I don't ever want to negate, your family, your children are the best things that ever happened in your life. But I will say that just is right there at the edge, man, because it was pretty magnificent. To know that we accomplished something like that. And that's the message we want to put out to our veteran community too, that, dreams and hopes and things that you fail at, don't stop and get to that tomorrow. Because, tomorrow might be different, Yeah. Could have a lot of success, could have a lot of failure, yeah, too. But it also will change at some point.
Yeah, and you really just kind of foreshadow what I wanted to talk about next. I mean, after just an incredible feat of perseverance and courage, dedication, you guys completed the paddle. And I love how you mentioned that when you landed in Antigua, it wasn't necessarily your final stopping point. It was your destination where you guys were trying to get to, but that wasn't where it all started, or wasn't where it all stopped, pardon me. So now looking back on the trip, as you just kind of touched on a lot of it there, what has it meant to you both to complete the trip, raise awareness for veteran suicide, and really just make the impact that you guys have made up to this point?
Get up.
Yeah, I think that the success of the whole mission and then bringing the community along with us made it something so much bigger than what we thought it was going to be. We had the physical journey, but our entire community made a difference. And I think that's the most feedback I get from the community was, thanks for taking us along. We were fortunate to send back some video and stuff along the way. And so they all felt like they were part of what was going on without being involved in the physical movement. So I think the success lies in the people around you. I really think that even if you're going to set off and conquer a mountain as an individual, that you're still going to need your community, your friends and followers, and the love and support. That's really where the success comes from. So I think that's important to remember when we do these extreme events or anything in the endurance category, is surround yourself with great love and support, and you're going to be successful, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, the part I love the most is, think about right now, 15 years, where are you going to be? Because 15 years ago, I would have never imagined that I'm going to be sitting here in a podcast room, talking to you fine gentlemen, and along with my partner that I rowed across an Atlantic Ocean with. And I thought of that. I think of that a lot at the most arbitrary spots. The other day, I'm in the shower. I'm just taking a shower, and I'm thinking to myself, how did I meet Billy, Cam, and Hupp? And then last night, I thought of it even more. I'm at dinner with a friend, and they gave me a picture of the 4 of us with our hands together coming off the boat. And I'm thinking to myself, where would I have ever imagined that would have happened? And so dreams come true. Yeah, I mean, it's, but I guess what I'm trying to say, not very eloquently and crying through it, is you just never know where you're going to be, 12 years from now. You just don't know. But the one thing that is going to deliver you to a spot to where it's going to be so magnificent is just like what Hupp said. You're not going to do it by yourself. You got to do it with others.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. I actually had seen that newspaper clipping this morning, was looking at that of you guys getting off the boat, holding hands at it dark outside. And, tell us now kind of where you're at in terms of total amount raised and what you guys are doing. Like you said, I know a big part of this was involving the community and raising that awareness to veteran suicide. What's, what are you guys planning to do with that, and what's kind of been the feedback that you've gotten so far in the veteran community?
We're driving on. I'm happy to say that, originally we envisioned that we'd get home and, kind of taper it off, within a 30-day period. But I think it still has synergy and it's still rolling. So we're going to keep working that campaign until we feel that we've actually run out of the gas there. But people are still involved. Now we're going to make presentations about what we did and the journey. And then people are continuing to present some thank you support on those events. And I think we just keep pushing. Paul challenged the other day, and I loved it because Paul's full of surprises. Paul put a challenge out there the other day and said, hey, we're actually now only, 200,000 short of a second kennel, which is made. So I know we didn't talk mega kennel yet, but a big chunk of what we did went to build a facility that will train and house dogs right on the Canine for Warrior campus. So again, think back, we were originally just going to train a few dogs, 4 dogs, 100,000, something like that was our vision. But in the end, the mission and the community ended up building an entire mega kennel that will train 64 dogs a cycle. I believe it's twice a year. So 150 dogs a year now are going to roll through the Courageous Kennel down on the Canines for Warriors campus. And, our community built that. And so we're close to, pushing on to try to build a second one. Yep, we'll just keep focused and see how that goes. Yeah. And then Paul has some other exciting news about somebody that came to us to use Courageous for another purpose.
Oh,
it
yeah.
keeps going on.
Yeah, so, the moment I got back, there's a young man named John Sauer Jr. He's a Special Olympian athlete. And the moment Hupp and I got back, this young man, he's blind, but very passionate. And now we're finding out, very passionate. And if you're listening, John, we'll row any ocean with you. He wanted to go to church like the next day. We haven't even been back, not even 24 hours, And so definitely was like, we'll meet up, we'll go. And then after church, he's like, I want to meet up with you again because I want to talk to you about something. And then it was really about, hey, I want to row an ocean. And so, I'm looking at this young man and I'm like, wow, I'm digging this. Let's talk, but let's talk with your dad, too. Right. Let's fold your dad into the conversation. Because, just like we were explaining before, rowing an ocean is a very physical feat, but it's also a logistics piece that's got to be put together very, pretty methodically. Anyway, but long story short, Hupp and I are now working with John Sawyer Jr. and Senior, the Double Johns, and we're going to do a little mini coastal row to raise awareness for Special Olympics Florida. And the main theme on that too is about inclusion, about having everybody included in an activity, really no matter anybody's abilities, that you can adjust. And I think Hupp and I learned a big lesson when we went out the other day. We did our first actual on the water with Courageous, with both Johns and Hupp and I, to go out and see what it's like to have somebody that can't see now function on an ocean rowboat and what we have to do. And we're not going to look at it as obstacles. It's a matter of, okay, what has to just be done differently.
What are the abilities and how do you work around the abilities he has? How do you exploit those for the benefit of the bigger team?
The controllables again.
Absolutely, the controllables again, right? Attacking the problem, not looking at the limitations.
And just like veteran suicide, Hupp and I really, and the guys, Billy and Cam, we really took a high passion about to rewrite the narrative about veteran suicide. And we're not saying that we didn't like anything about like the number 22 or anything like that, but we always felt like, well, 22 told us what the problem was, but it really doesn't talk about how significant the problem is or the solutions. So it would be just like this with inclusion. We found now trying to write like little pieces for John, to get awareness going. It's hard using that word disability because really people aren't, disability to me, I just don't like the word.
No,
it's
right,
just, they have certain abilities, right? Their abilities are different than ours.
It's focusing on the negative versus the positive.
That's going back to the,
Right,
what Don
yeah.
Grant was kind of making us focus on is that, here is your situation, and how are you going to make it work? So John is blind, yes, but how are we going to still row in an ocean? How can we be, successful? And I'm sure we're going to, in this short period, go, ooh, whoa, we didn't think of that. But
there's things to learn again.
Yeah, tell them about
that's
the oars,
exciting.
Hupp.
Yeah, so in normal ocean rowing, when it's dark, for us there was an issue where you can't see, your paddles, and so we had some reflective tape close to our hands so we could see that, and we knew the paddles were in the right direction. But in John's case, it's always dark; he can never see the paddle. So we're going to adapt some textured tape instead of reflective. Doesn't work for him, but textured tape so he can feel on his thumbs that the paddles are in the right direction. And then he'll know he's always, set and ready to go. So adapt and overcome. Yeah, it's...
I know I was so excited to see the announcement on Facebook that you guys were working with John, just because I think what's most interesting about your story is now, even when we talk about it, and I will note these two guys, you guys have become local celebrities, if I will say. It's... it's pretty much everywhere we go. Even when we were working on playing the episode and me and Paul went and got coffee together, I don't think it took 2 seconds of Paul walking in the door for 5 people to come up, say, hey, how happy they are to see him, how happy that he's back. And I love that you guys have never wanted the credibility. You've never wanted to be the names. Of course, it's always been the mission. But now that it's leading you guys to helping someone on their path and helping them overcome something that they might not see as possible. What started as a mission to raise awareness for veteran suicide has now led to you guys just inspiring people and showcasing what's really possible. And that even comes down to John, that comes down to myself. I think Brian, everybody that's had a chance to hear your story is just really, really incredible. So I've really appreciated hearing from your perspectives just the way you viewed the trip, because again, I think I love the idea that it comes back around to the mission that you guys have stood for and the why behind all of it. So I just have one more question for you guys as we ask all of our questions, or all of our guests this question, but what part of the Grit Creed resonates most with you guys? I know you've enjoyed a lot of parts of it. Obviously, it applies to a lot of the trip, considering what you guys really did arguably has taken the most grit of any guest we've had on so far, not to discredit anybody else, but I think they would say the same if they tried to comprehend spending 51 days on the water. So nonetheless, what part of the Grit Creed resonated most with you guys, and why would that be?
Yeah, I like the part of the creed that brings in what's called the Serenity Prayer traditionally. It's a tool that I've used my whole life, honestly, and that it's just so powerful if you learn to mentally accept the things that you cannot change, come to terms with that, and then realize that a little bit of courage can help you change the things that are in your own power, right? One step at a time. And then the wisdom to know the difference, right? We can go back to the podcast and find every time the adversity came up, we'd pivot. That's the wisdom to know the difference, to take a different tack, to take a different avenue of success. So to me, that's a really powerful couple lines there, and I'm glad to see it in your creed. That's one you can carry your whole life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful, Hupp. Yeah, I like it. For me, I picked I'll lead by example, because the purpose is bigger than me. And the reason I picked that is because, like, folks will look at that and you have to actually think that you have to be perfect all the time. Like, right, when you hear that, I'm going to lead by example. But there's going to be times where I know I'm probably leading and I'm not doing a really good example about it. I might fail or something might come up, but that is going to be okay, because I'm going to recognize it and then I'm going to try again. Because I think we've talked about this, that our society really lays heavy expectations, and your expectation doesn't mean that you have to be perfect all the time when you're trying to lead or you're trying to do something or you're trying to accomplish something. But the example really will be, where's the fortitude to come back at it again, to learn what you did wrong. Like, wow, that was not really a good way to lead. That was not a good decision. And to have that fortitude and to shed, your ego and say, I'm going to come back at it again and I'm going to try again to do it. And I think Hupp and Billy and Cam and I really set the example on that a lot in front of our community. We really, by doing this, put ourselves, really out there. And I think Kobe too, the reason I think, folks feel at ease in coming up to us is because we have done that.
Yeah.
Humility
is important on the backside of this. And sometimes they say, don't believe your own stuff. Well, the four of us got across together. And so when you come home, humility is key. And I really just keep putting the credit on the community too, because, we did something physical. They did something incredible.
Yeah.
And what's the expression you guys use? It takes
an island across an ocean.
There it is.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, love that part. Happy to be a part of that island.
Yeah, that's copyrighted and
what a great expression.
No, it is.
Well,
but it's a testament.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
there's this community.
and it wasn't just. I think the key thing is when folks or any organization or any high figure uses a slogan and all that, it has to live. It has to be a living, tangible slogan. Otherwise, it doesn't mean nothing.
Right.
And that one lives. I know that for a fact.
Absolutely.
And I think it will live on for a very long time. So for all of our listeners, if you want to keep up with Paul and Hupp, you can check out their Far From Home Facebook, website, as well as keep up with John and their next journey. I'm sure they would like to thank everyone that supported them this far, the Talisker Whiskey Challenge as well. I appreciate you guys coming on, sharing your wisdom, inspiring so many people, from myself to Brian to grandparents to people around the island. Just, again, the impact you guys have had near and far has been incredible to see. So, again, I really appreciate you coming out. And, all in all, that's a wrap for us here today at the Grit.org podcast. Please check out our other episodes. Leave us a comment and tell us something you enjoyed about the Far From Home project. Share this with someone you think it would resonate with. As always, we appreciate you tuning in for another episode of the Grit.org podcast.